Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening from whichever part of the world that you're watching from. And welcome to this talk show here at the World Water Week, which will be all about localizing gender-responsive budgeting through a WASH project in Karnali that we'll be taking a deeper look at today. We're so happy to have you here with us, whether you're here in the room with us in Stockholm or watching from home online anywhere in the world. A very warm welcome to you, and thank you so much for tuning into this topic today. Now, my name is Hajer Yacoubi. I am a former United Nations Youth Representative for the Netherlands, but above all, I'm very delighted to be your moderator for these upcoming 20 minutes as we're going to be delving into an important topic. Now, as I said, today's session will be all about taking a deeper look at how gender-responsive budgeting is being put into action in Nepal's Karnali region through SUSWA WASH project that we'll be taking a deeper look at. You can see a slide up here as well of the specific region that we'll be taking a look at today. And I'm very delighted to have two incredible guests with me that can tell us more about the local WASH efforts that have led to more inclusive decision-making, sustainable results, and also help address the specific context-driven issues like discrimination against women that can be tackled through taking GRB, gender-responsive budgeting, into account. And with that being said, I would say let's hop right into introductions because they're seated here right with me. So delighted to have you. First of all, a very warm welcome to you, Krista Orama. You're the Senior Advisor for Gender Equality and Human Rights at the Ministry for Foreign Affairs of Finland. It's very good to have you here with us.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Thank you so much. And on your right side, we also have Rajuram Tirwa, Gender Equality, Disability and Social Inclusion Specialist at Sustainable WASH for All, NIRAS Finland. So it's great to have you here with us as well.
Thank you so much.
Amazing. I'm very excited to dive into a deeper conversation. I should also take a moment, though, to note that unfortunately, UN Women would have been here today, but they couldn't make it. But luckily, they are present with us in the online chat. So they will be active in the chat, sharing all sorts of things. So I would say a big shout out to Santosh Asharaya and Rashana Batarai from UN Women Nepal. We're very happy that you're here with us in online form and that you'll be sharing content and information throughout. Now, with that being said, there is so much for us to get into, and 20 minutes passes by really fast. But I think before we're able to, fully go into that conversation, I would actually like to start with you, Krista, because Finland is really, a global frontrunner when it comes to gender equality and human rights. So, given that context and the fact that that is also, represented in your foreign affairs policies, what would you say are some of the key objectives and principles of gender-responsive budgeting? Like, what does it mean? What does it entail? Can you tell us a bit more about it?
Yeah, definitely. And thanks for the question. Really good to be here. So gender-responsive budgeting, the idea behind it is really to make sure that budgets are considerate of gender issues, that the budgets that we design and put into place are not, so to say, blind or even neutral to gender issues, and specifically not, of course, inconsiderate on purpose, but that they consider gender issues and the impact that the budget has on gender equality. And so GRB analyzes the gender gaps, and then on the basis of that analysis, it designs the budget to make sure that the budget looks at those gaps and fills those gaps through budgeting. Yeah. That's really the key essence of it. And there are three key steps when you introduce a gender-based, gender-responsive budget, which I think are good to mention. First, introducing clear guidelines and tools so that we know what we're talking about. And there, for instance, UN Women has really good tools on gender-responsive budgeting that we can use, and also other UN agencies, and then guidelines that countries put into place. For instance, the government of Nepal has guidelines on gender-responsive budgeting that then helps the work forward. Right. Second, analysis on the ground. So what is going on related to gender issues on the ground, and then how can the budget, through targets and budgeting, make sure that those gaps are filled. Right. And then third, making sure that we adopt an intersectional analysis to it. So we're not only talking about women, we're talking about, also women with disabilities, women of different castes, such as in Nepal. So to make sure that we take that kind of holistic intersectional approach, realizing that we are talking about different kinds of women, also people of sexual and gender minorities that need to be addressed in the budgeting exercise. Right. And I think just to finalize off, I think that the essence is to make sure that budgeting doesn't happen in a vacuum. It goes along with goals on gender equality, and budgeting is a tool to reach that goal of advancing gender equality.
Yeah, that's amazing. And also I love how concrete those 3 steps also are in a way. I think that's also the bottom line of this session today to anybody that's listening in and that is interested into taking this up as well. I mean, you're already attesting to that by being so specific and concrete about the steps, but there are these tools online. You can go out there and try to apply it in whichever context you're also working. You gave the example, or you touched upon the example of Nepal. Finland has been working with the Ministry of Finance of Nepal to also introduce gender responsive budgeting more prominently. Raju, you know all about that as you're also part of the National Gender Responsive Budgeting Committee. Can you share with us how the public sector in Nepal has been working on institutionalizing gender responsive budgeting more centrally?
Yeah, actually, thank you so much for the question. Nepal has introduced this gender responsive budgeting at national level already in 2007.
Okay.
And later on, the Nepal has gone through the state's reformation and established the 3 layers of government. And this reformation of the government allows the government to develop the gender responsive budgeting.
Right.
And for that, this Ministry of Finance in Nepal has taken lead to establish this gender responsive budget in Nepal. So this allows you to institutionalize the gender responsive budget in the public finance management. And this has been taken lead by the Ministry of Finance in Nepal. So this allows mainly the 2 things, especially one thing is that how to categorize the activities which are planned for the gender responsiveness and how to making those activities in coding by in account software that has been developed by the Ministry of Finance Nepal.
Yeah. Amazing. And that's
Yeah.
sort of like 2007 is also quite some time that it's been taking place now. So it would be interesting later on to tap into some of those lessons learned and the best practices along the way. But
Yeah.
if I take that sort of step back and I look at the trajectory, if you will, of gender responsive budgeting, Krista, maybe you could answer to that is, has it always been a part of the tools that you use? Has it always been a focus also of Finland in foreign policies to make sure that we apply that lens to finance in that matter?
So gender equality and advancing gender equality has been a key part of what Finland does globally and in Nepal especially. We go 10, 20 years back on advancing both WASH but also gender equality in a tight partnership with the government of Nepal. Finland has gender equality as a cross-cutting objective in our development policy and cooperation, which means that we look at in everything we do on development cooperation, we look at either targeted measures, advancing gender equality as the main issue of a project, and we have in Nepal also cooperation with UN Women on this on gender equality more broadly. And then through mainstreaming, for instance, in different sectors such as WASH or education, making sure that gender is mainstreamed and kind of thought through well, regardless of the sector. And then third, through policy influencing, both both with the government of Nepal and other governments, but also then at global level, the UN and the EU and so forth. So work on different gender equality from different perspectives.
Right.
And then how gender responsive budgeting came into this project, kind of as a specific target to look at, was that colleagues on the ground realized that there was an opportunity to implement the Nepali guidelines on gender responsive budgeting within that kind of broader gender framework. Because Nepal's government has these guidelines, but it's one thing to have guidelines and it's another thing to have them well implemented on the ground.
Right.
So that's where colleagues on the ground realized this is a moment for us to really look at the budgeting to make sure that it goes along with the goals that we have on gender equality in this
and work
project.
Together in that
yeah.
sense.
So
no, I really love that because I think overall we see that focused for gender equality we're far away from being there, but then the sort of like hard cut financial budgeting, looking at balance sheets, all those sorts of things, we're even farther away from incorporating it in there and making sure that we also get it into those hard spots that we sort of like account for it. I think it's so imperative. So one thing I'm also taking away from the both of you is how context specific things are, how, the intersectional approach that you mentioned as one of the key pillars, how important it is. So when we talk about WASH programming and when we we look at, so to say, the sort of gender norms and practices that are at play there. Could you shine some light for us, Raju, to the gender norms and practices when it comes to WASH programming in Karnali?
Yeah, thank you so much. If we talk about the Karnali, Karnali is the province which is located at the western part of Nepal,
right,
and which is quite behind in many indicators in connection to the development.
Okay.
And there are some other issues such as access to the WASH facilities and some other discriminative norms which has been already been practiced in Karnali. So in Karnali, actually, if we talk about the some norms regarding this WASH sector, there are many practices we can see. For instance, often women are responsible to manage the water inside the home. And this is because of this main headed and this patriotic culture of the society. And this has been making impact to taking care of the children, including those who are supposed to go to the schools.
Right.
And the next one is they are often is also responsible to take care of this sanitation management also. For instance, this cleaning the dishes, doing laundry, and just maintaining the toilets. So these are the things that they have to be responsible to do. So these are also creating some challenges. And these are making disturbed to participate in some other social events. And the next one is often some of the women are not allowed to use the tap in the toilet during the menstrual period.
Wow,
This is connected to the religious leaders and some social norms as well, and which is impacting their health badly in terms of menstrual health and other areas as well. And the next one is the women are often use tap outside the house, and the tap are typically located outside the house, and which makes them disturbed in the privacy, maintaining the privacy as well. And similarly, the women often they are not allowed to have this nutritional products, especially this curd and milk during the period, and which is impacting their nutrition as well during the period. And if we talk about some norms at the school, and often the girls they don't go to the school because of some unwelcoming environment in the school and some unmanaged menstrual friendly WASH structures.
Right, that are lacking, that are preventing it.
These are the major norms, social norms. So on top of that, if we talk about some leadership role of the women and girls in the society, they are not encouraged to take the lead, for instance, for the water users associations. So this is because the people think that they are not capable, and this is patriotic.
But it's not. It's, as you say, it's patriarchal. It's hurdles that we need to overcome. I also know that you're working a lot to make sure that there is also capacity building, if you will, through the SUSWA projects with local governments in order to apply gender responsive budgeting. Can you maybe just shed some light on what you're doing in practice to sort of like have that capacity built to have this be implemented as a tool?
Yeah, actually, as I mentioned earlier, that now the Ministry of Finance, Nepal, has taken the lead in all three layers of the government to institutionalize the gender responsive budget. And for that, actually, the accounting system of three layers of the government, they are inlining this gender budget responsive in their planning and budgeting. And when SUSWA our project realized that we need to have some sort of support the local government to enhance their capacity in gender responsive budgeting as well. And then we conducted one GRB training for the local decision makers and the municipal officials of the local government to enhance their capacity, not only for the technically budget coding at the public accounting system, also to realize the issues of gender responsiveness, so that they will be able and encouraged, motivated to make the planning of the activities for the gender responsive. And it was conducted. And later on, another important thing is that we had supported local government to formulate the gender responsive and the disability inclusive plan through the inclusive policy analysis and disability inclusive workshops. And these plans are 5-year periodic plans which are formulated in the municipality, and this plan will be linked with the 7-step of planning process. And this will follow to make their planning in the future. And the next one, we are also supporting local government from institutional capacity enhancement perspective to formulate the local policies for the wash sector, especially in order to implement this inclusive, gender responsive and disability inclusive plan to implement these plans.
So it seeps through, as you said, the budgeting, the balance sheet, so to say, into all these different layers, into local policies eventually. So that's a way that it sort of like trickles through in all layers.
Yeah, of course, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, these policies are very important because the local government cannot implement any of the things if they don't have prevailing policies. They should be connected their implementation strategy with the policies.
Yeah, but it shows sort of like the power of that seeping through. You start somewhere, and then if it's like passed on the baton, so to say, to each next person in line that's responsible, you have that big effect. And that's actually something I wanted to ask you, Krista, because like when we're talking about sort of like the norms that we can shift by applying gender responsive budgeting, what is some of the impact that you, for example, seen in Nepal, given the context of all the SUSWA projects that you've been involved with there?
Well, I think first in relation to that, it's interesting that both two objectives need budget, but then budget also needs objectives. And, in this kind of trickling down, at the municipal level, we've been talking a lot about that budgeting is not either anything that you only look at spreadsheets, but you kind of have to keep the head up in terms of, looking at what do you want to reach in terms of gender equality and what is the budget a tool for. And it brings us back to this because indeed, I mean, this SUSWA project is what we call a gender transformative project where we manage to look at gender norms and structures beyond just being responsive to gender issues, which kind of maintains the status quo, to actually going to the norms and having conversations on them. And if I just take this this menstruation isolation, for instance, as an example that Raju mentioned, the norm and the related behavior in Nepal has been that women during menstruation, due to impurity, they, for instance, have to sleep outside in sheds, or they can't use water due to this impurity. But then at the previous phase of our programming on WASH, there was an infrastructural decision made to move community households to individual water taps. So water came closer to the families, closer to the households, and women who could not access the communal water taps could use water inside of the house. So actually it increased their access to water. And this then brought to broader conversations also between generations in the communities about gender norms and also how we can tackle, for instance, the norm of menstruation isolation. And things, norms change is a really long process. But I think what you can look at in a project is, how can my project contribute to the norms change? And that's what we've done with the menstruation isolation conversations, which from being kind of at the margins of previous projects are now really at the very core of this project as well.
I love that. There was a session previously where we were talking about moving from the margins to the center, and that's at core what you're doing here, right? Because I love how you say it's not in response to, but it's like, how can we actually make sure that our objective has a transformative nature, that we can shift these norms, so to say, when you say that. Thank you so much. Raju, we're almost at the end of the talk show, but if you could very briefly share from your perspective, what do you think is the importance and the power of shifting the norms through gender-responsive budgeting that you have seen?
Actually, yes, the first what I would say is that this realization of this requirement of gender responsiveness is very much important. If we talk about the capacity enhancement of the local government, this is capacity enhancement on not only the budget coding. That will not contribute all the for all the things we are seeking for, but the understanding and realization of this gender responsiveness, that's the important thing. And another important thing is that this gender responsive budgeting. Gender responsive budgeting should be the the regular routine of the local government. And if we consider this gender responsive budgeting, the planning, budgeting, and also coding, very important thing, and that will contribute to regularize this gender responsiveness at the local government. That will contribute. And similarly, another important thing is that just creating enabling environment, and, not only for participation in particular event, also to make them active for the meaningful participation,
Right.
so that they will be able to involve in the planning and budgeting of responsive budget gender
Yeah.
responsive activeness.
Yeah, it's
So-
almost like engagement is a criteria to make this work, and then the outcome of that is also better engagement, because that's what Krista was so eloquently sharing, like the impact that you can have to sort of like bring people back into, you know, that isolation that you mentioned before, and make sure that women can sort of like, you know, not be impeded and hurdled by all the contexts that you described previously.
Yeah, yes, of course, yes.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Thank you,
I mean, I could talk with you guys all day long about this, because there's so much to be shared about it, and I think the transformative potential of it is so big, and you're showcasing it with this specific example from Karnali. But I really want to thank you for sharing this. I know that the work doesn't end here, and that you're going to continue to be doing it. So thank you so much for doing the good work, and thank you so much to all of you for tuning in.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sorry.